The air in the apartment was thick with the scent of jasmine and betrayal. Elara was standing paralyzed, clutching a small silver picture frame, a wedding favor soon to be meaningless, while the voice of my granddaughter Serafina echoed through the thin kitchen wall. She was speaking in a casual, relaxed tone, discussing my life, my love, and my eventual demise as if ordering lunch. "Honestly," she whispered with a calculating edge, "I hope she dies before the wedding so I don't have to deal with her anymore. Then I'd get the inheritance too, and could plan the wedding I actually want." The sound of my own heart pounding was the only thing preventing me from collapsing entirely. I realized in that horrifying moment that the $80,000 I was spending was not a gift of love. It was merely a transaction, and my life was the only thing preventing her from completing it. My name is Elara Vance. I am 68 years old, and I live comfortably in Aiken Falls, Oregon, in the home my late husband Ethan and I paid off decades ago. Ethan, a good man who worked hard, left me well provided for 3 years ago when he passed. But wealth means nothing when the people you love see you only as a walking checkbook. I am not, as my family might assume, merely a sweet old grandmother who didn't understand how the world worked. For 2 decades, I owned and ran Elara's Bistro, a successful family restaurant. I spent those years navigating vendor contracts, managing accounts, and negotiating with tough business personalities. My office filing cabinet holds 2 decades of meticulous records. I know how to read the fine print. Serafina is my son Marcus's daughter, my only granddaughter. She is 24, works as a marketing coordinator, and, until recently, was the light of my life. When she and her fiancé, Damien Brad, got engaged last year, the joy I felt was immense. They initially planned a small, intimate ceremony with a budget of about $5,000. But Serafina became consumed by images of magazine-worthy events. One evening, flipping through glossy pages at my kitchen table, she sighed, "I wish we could afford something like this, but I guess we'll just have to make do with what we have." It was a trap, though I didn't see it then. I saw an opportunity for connection. "Sweetheart," I said, "what if Grandma helped make your dream wedding come true?" Her reaction, a tight, joyous hug, was enough to convince me. The dream wedding totaled $80,000. Between Ethan's life insurance, our savings, and my restaurant earnings, I could afford the gift. I put down $15,000 in deposits and signed all the agreements, taking on the role of the primary client. We secured Willow Creek Manor, Maple Ridge Country Club, opulent palate cuisine, elegant events catering, and hired a string quartet, a professional photographer, and the top florist. The remaining $65,000 in final payments were scheduled to be due 30 days before the wedding, which was now 6 weeks away. Marcus, Michael, and Chloe Karen were effusive in their gratitude, assuring me I was making dreams come true. I felt proud, thinking this was the ultimate gesture of love. But my generosity quickly curdled into resentment in Serafina's eyes. The trouble started subtly, about 2 months into the planning. I brushed off the initial incidents as wedding stress, but they began to chip away at my heart. During a meeting with a florist, I suggested adding white roses to the bouquet, a nod to my own wedding day. Serafina immediately dismissed the idea, rolling her eyes right in front of the vendor. "Grandma, that's so old-fashioned," she snapped. "We're going for a more modern, elegant look. White roses are what people used in the 1950s. I was hurt and embarrassed, but I conceded instantly. "Of course, dear. It's your wedding." The dismissiveness became a pattern. My suggestions were routinely met with, "That's not the vibe we're going for," or "My friends would think that's weird." Then came the exclusion. I was paying for the $1,500 cake, yet when I arrived at the bakery for the tasting, I discovered the appointment had been moved without telling me. "Oh, didn't I mention it?" Serafina asked carelessly when I called her, adding that I didn't need to be there for every little detail. This was thousands of dollars being spent, and I was being treated like an interfering busybody rather than the financier. The worst slight involved the guest list. I found out my dearest friend, Vivian Ruth, hadn't received an invitation. When I inquired, I learned Serafina had systematically removed 6 of my closest friends, women who had supported me through Ethan's death. When I confronted her, Serafina shrugged. We needed to make cuts somewhere, and honestly, your friends won't really understand the type of wedding we're having. Serafina, these are important people in my life, I pleaded. If I'm paying for this wedding, I should be able to invite my friends. Grandma, you're being dramatic, she retorted. It's not about you. It's about Damien and me having the perfect day we want. It was clear. I was only good enough to pay, not to participate. When her friends were around, Serafina visibly squirmed if my involvement was mentioned. I overheard her describing me as someone who was really into this wedding planning stuff and has opinions about everything, using a tone that implied deep embarrassment. Even my suggestion of a memory table to honor family members who had passed, including Ethan, was shot down. That's so depressing, she declared. We want people to be happy, not thinking about dead people. I felt like a burden, not a beloved relative. I dreaded our meetings. The pattern was etched in stone. Serafina wanted my money, but not me. She saw me as an obstacle to her vision. And neither Marcus nor Chloe ever intervened. They were content to let the money flow, regardless of how their mother was treated. I kept telling myself, just wait until the wedding is over. I had no idea things were about to reach a level of cruelty I couldn't comprehend. 4 weeks before the wedding, I was supposed to meet Serafina at her apartment to finalize the wedding favors. I arrived a little early, about 1:45 p.m. I still had the key she'd given me the previous winter when she was sick. She said it made her feel safer. As I quietly unlocked the door, I could hear her voice clearly through the thin walls. She was on the phone with her maid of honor, Lena, Sarah. She didn't realize I was there. I stepped inside, intending to wait in the kitchen, but her words halted me instantly. Lena, I'm so exhausted from all this wedding planning, Serafina sighed. And the worst part is dealing with my grandmother. She keeps trying to give her opinions about everything. My heart hammered. I froze, unable to move. The flowers, the music, the guest list, even the wedding favors. It's so embarrassing, she continued. She has these old-fashioned ideas about what a wedding should be like. My friends keep asking why she's so involved in everything. They think it's weird that someone her age is so into planning a young person's wedding. Like, doesn't she have her own life? She then laughed, a cold, mean sound. Exactly. I keep trying to hint that she should back off, but she doesn't get it. She thinks because she's paying for everything she gets to have opinions about every little detail. I felt a dizzying punch to the gut. This was how she repaid my life savings, by treating me as a source of embarrassment. Then came the escalation. I wish she would just write the check and disappear. Serafina's voice grew animated. She's ruining my perfect day with her constant input. This is supposed to be about me and Damien, not about making my grandmother feel included. She accused me of being lonely and desperate for attention. Like, get a hobby, you know. My blood ran cold when she spoke the next sentence. Sometimes I think about what it would be like if she just wasn't around anymore, Serafina said, as casually as commenting on the weather. Like if she died tomorrow, I wouldn't have to deal with all her opinions and interference. I couldn't breathe. She wasn't finished. Actually, that would solve a lot of problems, she continued, pacing. I mean, I know it sounds terrible, but think about it. If she died before the wedding, I wouldn't have to deal with her trying to control everything, and I'd inherit whatever money she has left. Her voice shifted, taking on a hard, calculating tone I had never heard before. She's got to have at least $1 million saved up. She owned that restaurant for 20 years, plus whatever my grandfather left her. If she died now, I'd get all that money and could plan the wedding I actually want, not the one she's trying to force on me. She had calculated my worth. She had assigned a monetary value to my death. God, Lena, I know how awful this sounds, Serafina said, but she didn't sound repentant, only exhilarated. But honestly, I hope she dies before the wedding so I don't have to deal with her anymore. Then I'd get the inheritance too and could plan the wedding I actually want. The words, sharp and definitive, sliced through the quiet apartment. Then, she cemented her fate by revealing her confidence in my weakness. The thing is, Serafina settled into a chair. She's so naive about business stuff. She thinks because she ran some little restaurant in the middle of nowhere she understands contracts and vendor relationships. But she doesn't realize that once you sign with vendors you're locked in. She can't back out now without losing all the deposits. She paused, then added, "She's too sweet to ever actually follow through on any threats. She's one of those people who just wants everyone to be happy. She'd never do anything to hurt me, even if I hurt her first." You know what the funniest part is? Serafina's voice rose with triumphant excitement. She signed all the contracts as the primary client because she wanted to take care of everything for me. But she doesn't understand that now she's legally responsible for all the payments. Even if she wanted to back out, she'd lose thousands of dollars in deposits. She's trapped. I gently placed the bag of wedding favor samples on the counter, wrote a quick, simple note. Had an emergency. We'll talk later. Love, Grandma, and left, closing the door softly behind me. I drove home shaking. Serafina thought I was trapped, weak, and desperate for her love. She was about to discover just how wrong she was about the woman who had run a successful business for 20 years. I cried that night, harder than I had when Ethan died, grieving not the loss of money, but the shattering of a beloved relationship. Serafina had dismissed my entire professional life. She thinks because she ran some little restaurant in the middle of nowhere she understands contracts. That insult, combined with the death wish, galvanized me. I was not a naive old woman. I was a businesswoman. I slept barely an hour, but the next morning, I was fueled by clarity and resolve. I sat at my kitchen table, then went straight to my home office. I pulled out the filing cabinet I had used at Alara's Bistro, the one that held the careful, meticulous records of 2 decades. I spread out every single wedding contract. Willow Creek Manor, opulent palette cuisine, the photographer, the cake designer, the limo service. One by one, I read the cancellation clauses. Serafina was right about one thing. I was legally responsible. But she had fundamentally misread the situation. My smile returned for the first time in 24 hours. I wasn't merely a guarantor. I was the primary client. This meant I held the decision-making authority and, most importantly, the cancellation rights. Since the wedding was still 4 weeks away, I was well within the cancellation window for nearly every service. The math was simple. I had paid $15,000 in non-refundable deposits. By canceling, I would forfeit that $15,000, but I would avoid the remaining $65,000 in final payments. Losing $15,000 was painful, but saving $50,000 net, and avoiding financing someone who wished me dead, was infinitely more satisfying. My first call was to attorney Kai Miller, Robert Chen, who had handled Ethan's estate and my previous business dealings. "Kai, I need some advice about contract cancellation," I stated. I explained the arrangement, clarifying my status as the primary client. "Let me be clear, Ilara," Kai confirmed. "You signed these as the primary client, not just a financial backer. You have every right to cancel these services with appropriate notice. You'll lose the deposits, yes, but you are not legally obligated to continue with services you no longer want. Even though it's for my granddaughter's wedding." Yes. "It doesn't matter who the wedding is for. You are the client. You can cancel them for any reason, or no reason at all, provided you follow the contract procedures." Next, I called my financial advisor, Dina Hayes, Helen Morrison. I asked for my exact liquid assets, noting I was considering significant changes to commitments. Dina informed me I had about $450,000 in savings, CDs, and money market accounts, plus my paid-off house, worth $300,000. Crucially, she added, "Oh, and the estate settlement from your sister Elizabeth last month added another $400,000 to your portfolio." Sat back. Serafina had guessed I had $1 million, and she wasn't wrong, but she had no idea the figure was now substantially higher than her estimate. Dina, if I were to cancel some contracts and lose about $15,000 in deposits, how would that affect my financial position? Ilara, $15,000 would be less than 2% of your liquid assets. You would barely notice it financially speaking. The money was irrelevant now. This was about dignity. I had been in business too long to continue funding people who showed me such profound disrespect. Serafina had made two colossal errors: assuming I was too emotionally weak to make a business decision, and underestimating my legal competence. "I've decided to cancel all the wedding contracts, Kai," I told my attorney the following morning. "What's changed?" "Let's just say I've learned some things about the people I was trying to help, and I've decided my money would be better spent elsewhere." I was explicit. I'm not canceling to punish anyone. I'm canceling because I refuse to fund people who don't respect me. Kai agreed it was a very reasonable business decision. That afternoon I acted on the savings. I booked the luxury 2-week Norwegian Fjords voyage, Alaska cruise. I had always dreamed of taking. The suite cost exactly $50,000. The exact net amount I was saving by canceling Serafina's wedding. As I handed over my credit card, a profound sense of lightness washed over me. For the first time in 3 years since Ethan's passing, I was spending money on myself, not on people who didn't appreciate it. I was done being the sweet, naive grandmother. I was done funding my own dismissal. The next morning, dressed in my sharpest business suit, I began the systematic dismantling of Serafina's dream. I worked methodically through the cancellation letters prepared by Kai Miller. I started with the venue Willow Creek Manor. I called Ms. Vance, Mrs. Patterson, the events coordinator. "Ms. Vance, this is Ilara Vance. I need to cancel the wedding reception scheduled for 4 weeks from Saturday." There was a long pause. "Oh my, Mrs. Vance, I'm so sorry to hear that. Is everything all right?" "There have been some family circumstances that have made it necessary to cancel," I replied calmly. "I understand I will forfeit my deposit." "Yes, unfortunately, the $3,000 deposit is non-refundable at this point. But you won't be responsible for the remaining $12,000 in final payments." "That is exactly what I expected. Please send me written confirmation." Next was opulent palate cuisine. Balance due in 10 days, $10,000. "Monica, this is Ilara Vance. I need to cancel the catering service for the Vance-Wilson wedding." "Oh no. You'll lose your $2,000 deposit, but you won't owe the final payment," Monica confirmed. One by one I called every vendor. The florist, the photographer, the string quartet. Each conversation was professional, efficient, and brief. Each confirmed the same loss/savings structure. By noon, I had legally cancelled $80,000 worth of wedding services. I had lost $15,000, but I had saved $65,000. Then I sat back and waited. The first call came 2 days later, while I was tending to my garden. "Grandma." Serafina's voice was shaky, laced with disbelief. "I just got the strangest call from Willow Creek Manor. They said you cancelled the reception venue. But that can't be right, can it? There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake, Serafina," I said, my voice steady and calm. "I cancelled all the wedding vendors yesterday." "What? But why? What happened?" "I heard your conversation with Lena on Tuesday. The one where you said you hoped I would die before the wedding so you could get my inheritance and plan the wedding you actually wanted." The silence on the line was absolute, suffocating. "Grandma, I was just stressed. I didn't mean." "You calculated my net worth, Serafina. You said I was naive about business, that I was trapped by the contracts I'd signed. You called me an embarrassing burden and said you couldn't wait to stop pretending to care about my opinions. I was just venting. I didn't mean any of it. You meant every word. And you were wrong about something important. I'm not trapped by those contracts. I was the primary client, which means I had every right to cancel them. And I'm not naive about business. I spent 20 years successfully running Ilara's bistro. But Grandma, the wedding is in 3 weeks. What am I supposed to do?" That's not my problem to solve anymore, Serafina. You wanted to plan your own wedding without my interference. Now you can. The immediate fallout was immense. The calls started within hours. First Michael, my son, called. "Mom, you can't do this to Serafina," he pleaded. "She's your granddaughter. She made a mistake, but she's young. She's 24 years old, Marcus. She's old enough to understand that wishing someone dead while spending their money has consequences." Karen called next, crying hysterically. "Ilara, please. You have to understand, Serafina is just overwhelmed with wedding planning. She loves you so much. If she loves me, she has a strange way of showing it. She removed my decades-long friends from the guest list, excluded me from vendor meetings, and dismissed every suggestion I made. All while I was paying for everything. We'll pay you back, you say. With what money, Chloe? You couldn't afford this wedding before I offered to pay for it. Nothing has changed except that Serafina showed me her true feelings." Brad called too, the poor young man. He sounded genuinely shocked. "Mrs. Vance, I'm so sorry about what Serafina said. She was just stressed and she didn't mean any of it. Please, isn't there some way we can work this out?" "Damien, I'm not angry with you, but I am not going to continue funding someone who wishes I was dead. Serafina is free to plan whatever wedding she can afford on her own." The most dramatic conversation was with Serafina the next day. She was sobbing uncontrollably. "Grandma, I called all the vendors. They want $65,000 to reinstate the services. We don't have that kind of money. You know we don't have that kind of money." "I know exactly what you can afford, Serafina. You were planning a $5,000 wedding before I offered to help. You can still have that wedding." "But all my friends are expecting this beautiful wedding. The invitations are already sent. Everyone knows it's going to be at Willow Creek Manor. Then you'll have to explain to your friends why the plans changed. Perhaps you can tell them that you wished your grandmother was dead and she decided not to fund your dream wedding anymore." "I didn't mean it. I was just frustrated." "Serafina, you didn't just say you were frustrated. You said you hoped I would die. You calculated how much money you'd inherit. You called me naive and trapped. Those were not words spoken in frustration. Those were your true feelings." Held firm. "I'm not ruining your wedding, Serafina. I'm simply not paying for it anymore. You can still get married. You just can't do it on my dime while wishing I was dead." 2 weeks later, an invitation arrived. Serafina and Damien were getting married at the Grandview Assembly Hall, the local community center, with a reception in the fellowship hall. The cardstock was simple, a far cry from the elaborate letterpress ordered for the original event. I did not attend. Instead, I was on my Norwegian fjords voyage, watching glaciers slide into the sea from the deck of my luxury suite. I made new friends, enjoyed incredible sights, and reveled in the luxury I had finally allowed myself. I was spending money on someone who appreciated it. Me. When I returned to Aiken Falls, a simple thank you card awaited me. It showed a picture of Serafina and Damien looking happy in front of a modest backdrop at the assembly hall. Inside she had written, "Dear Grandma, thank you for everything you taught me about respect and consequences. I understand now why you made the decision you did. I hope someday I can earn back your trust and your love. Love, Serafina." I kept the card, but I did not call her. Some lessons require time to fully absorb. 3 months later I updated my will. Serafina's planned inheritance was redirected to several local charities. I also established a substantial scholarship fund for young women starting their own businesses, using the money I had originally intended to leave to someone who had wished for my death. I learned the most valuable lesson of all. It is never too late to demand respect, and even at 68 years old, I had the power to make choices that honored my own dignity and self-worth. Serafina got married, just not the wedding she had planned. I received something far more valuable than any extravagant ceremony could provide. My self-respect back. Sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes generosity means stopping the flow of money to people who refuse to appreciate it. And sometimes, the best gift you can give is the experience of consequences. My money, my choice, and my dignity were worth more than any wedding. And I sleep peacefully now, knowing that I do not fund people who wish me dead.